amazing Phil Marsh once again in 2 weeks you've managed to get you on, which is brilliant as usual. Good to see you. How are you, sir?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. As I say, good to be back on again. Not so long ago that we was on, so good to get two in a row and have a good chat and a catch up, which we all enjoy. So yeah, looking forward to getting stuck in with Mark and answering some of these questions. So yeah, should be good.
Yeah, brilliant, man. And yeah, we've got Mark on for everyone's viewership. He when we did the show with Phil last week, he had this idea of a show, and we're going to run with it. So I'm just the curator. He's come up with the ideas and the brains behind it. So we've got Mark, stalwart of the Balls Out podcast at this point. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Yeah, good weekend. Happy to get going. We won't say about my results that destroyed my weekend with my own teams, but apart from that, I can't complain.
Yeah, well, we'll touch on United. We are expecting Jonathan at some point. He wanted to jump on and definitely talk United. So let's start there. Phil, you must have watched the game. Initial thoughts. Let's focus on the 90 minutes before we talk about the penalties. What was your thoughts in the initial 90 minutes of that, obviously, defeat to Fulham in the FA Cup?
To be honest, I was travelling back I went visiting a family member yesterday, so I didn't see the full game. I got back sort of just for the second half, really. So in terms of what I seen in the second half, it wasn't probably as bad as what I imagined the first half would have been. But yeah, again, I think, when we look at United at the moment, we see little pieces of individual brilliance and, maybe 5-10 minute spells here and there where we look half decent, but overall, just not good enough and not enough quality really. That's the type of game really where you think of United teams in years gone by where they just blowing teams like that away and sort of, putting 3 or 4 goals in. And at the moment, I think obviously scoring goals is a massive issue. We're having to rely on, you likes of Bruno and as I said, moments of individual brilliance to sort of come up with the goals, which, is never a good sign really. And you're always going to struggle if you're relying on that kind of stuff. So, yeah, not the best performance, and obviously, a disappointing way to go out on the penalty shootout. But yeah, I think obviously sums up what's been a really poor season, really, with going out of another competition and sort of having just the Europa League now to sort of take our bacon, if you like.
Yeah, salvage something. Yeah, same question to you, Mark. Really, what was your thoughts on the 90 minutes itself? Difficult, but
Oh, well, I wish I was like Phil and didn't see the first half because it was hard to stay awake. It was horrendous. Like, it's the basics again, isn't it? We're giving away the ball, 5 yard passes. Both teams just giving away sloppy passing. It was a nervous first half, I'd say. But yeah, moments FC. We really need to change our motto to that because for last 5 years, as Phil's just alluded to, it's constantly a flash from Bruno or a bit of I think back to that goal from Rashford against Man City, which when he absolutely fun the cracks one off the underside of the bar, and it comes from nowhere, does it? And yet we can't string 5-6 passes together and create a standard chance. Yeah, it's just horrible to watch. It's just so no confidence, and that's what it is, isn't it? You can't play a 5 yard passes because you're thinking too much and you're not looking what you're doing. So, but yeah, penalties. The last two penalty takers, I think we all questioned. Probably as a stepping up. Xerxes could barely stand up on the pitch, but he obviously, well, Phil knows how it works. You put your hand up at the end of the day, yeah, I'll take one because someone else has said they don't want it. If you're that tired, the manager's looking at you going, I don't want you to take it, but no one else is willing to step up and take it. So
yeah, it's a really difficult one because, like you say, he looked knackered by the end of the 120. And you've got to give him credit if he was one of the ones to put his hand up and say, yeah, if that's how they've done it. I've got to give him a bit of credit for that, to play a full 120 and then to say, his start of the career at United. So you've got to give him the bottle for that, saying fair play, you put your hand up. Unfortunate, because I think it was more of a decent save rather than a bad penalty. Lindelof, on the other hand, his penalty was poor. I'm very surprised. But what do you make of a manager, considering we still had, I mean, who else was still on the pitch at the time? You had Obi Martin,
Garnacho.
Garnacho was still there. Yeah. So what do you make a manager sort of letting a defender? I mean, I know his penalty record is pretty decent, but sure you'd want to get your strikers on and your forward players on that sort of situation first.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one with the penalty situation. I think, obviously, all the teams I've ever played in, it's been predominantly the attacking players that have sort of wanted to take the penalties and had the confidence to step up. However, if you've got players that are refusing, or in terms of like, not really putting their hand up and stepping forward of wanting to take one, as a manager, you're not really left with much option really than the people who want to take the responsibility and go up there and take a penalty. It would have been nice, obviously, to see some of the more attacking players, step up and have that little bit about them where they want to sort of have that bit of pressure and do what they needed to do. But yeah, unfortunately for Lindelof, for him, he's obviously not played a lot of football as well, which never helps. So big moment, big pressure, yeah, to come on and obviously um, take a penalty like that, especially when it's not really in your comfort zone, is always asking for trouble. We've seen it over the years with a lot of the defensive side of players who, fair play to them for having the sort of minerals to step up and take one. But yeah, you need them attacking players that are used to coming in front of goal and sort of picking a spot and just going for it really. So a little bit disappointing, but as I say, wouldn't be too overcritical really on them players because, as I say, you sort of in a lottery situation with a penalty shootout and the keepers sort of gambled on the Lindelof penalty, and it's a pretty easy save. And as you say, Xerxes was flagging at that point, and he's just sort of gone for power and tried to smash it, and it's a good save again. But yeah, disappointing, obviously, to go out like that. But as I say, I would always want me attacking players to put their hand up and sort of back themselves really to sort of go and hit the target and try and score because that's at the end of the day what you paid to do, and you should be having that self confidence to go and be able to pick a spot and sort of execute it well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's so difficult, like you say, lottery situation, especially in penalty shootouts. And the goalkeeper is a very experienced goalkeeper, very good goalkeeper. So you can't take away the fact that over the course of the 120 minutes, they probably deserve to go through. Mark, let's be honest. The defending from United was poor, and like we've said already, moments FC. The one moment that we managed to scrape out and get Bruno on the actual shooting opportunity was a very good goal, very well taken finish, but you got to say that Fulham really deserved to go through.
Yeah, I think if we're honest, we were expecting Fulham to go through. Well, I certainly was, just because you knew they were going to turn up and be more hungry for us, and that's the worst thing as a fan, or even as a player. Anyone who played football, you never want the teams wanting it more than you. If you start questioning that, what message are you sending out? And that's why with Obi coming on, I was going to say with the penalties, do you think the manager held him back? Because if you've got your first three penalty takers, the chances of missing gets bigger every step after the first three, doesn't it? We get five out of the way, and then it's sudden death. And do you really want them taking one? But yeah, we looked different in the second half with some young legs, people who wanted to show something. But in general, it was Fulham's all day long. Unana kept us in the game, for this time. So, yeah, there isn't much you can say. It was quite a boring game. It went a little bit end to end just before, trying to find a winner. But then he went extra time, and I thought extra time wasn't quite Italian football, play out for the draw. But you could see that they were dying on their feet. Mazraoui, I think something should be said about starting Ramadan. Obviously, he had his break, had his water. But I thought, again, he should have been taken off the pitch. At one point, I thought he was going to collapse. So, but it just shows lack
Yeah,
of depth.
yeah, you're right, mate. Because by the end of the 120, there were a lot of players there that would literally just crawl into the finish line. It's pretty poor. I mean, I've been singing the praises a lot of Amarin this year because I still think he's got a lot to show, and he's still so young in his United career, and he will come good eventually in my eyes. But that was poor man management yesterday, that's for sure. You know, there was a lot of players there, especially going into extra time. More changes probably should have been made to keep it fresh, keep it light. Yeah, I don't think we use all of our subs. I can't remember. I don't think we did. Could be wrong.
No, and we didn't even name a full bench, did we? We named two under 18 goalkeepers and left one sub off the bench.
Right,
But he brought on all the experienced players and then was left only with youth.
right. So yeah, I mean, we'll get on to that later because that's actually one of the things we were going to talk about. Would you play your youth straight into the first team? But we'll come on to that later on. Yeah, it's difficult to know what to talk about from yesterday's game. Obviously, let's talk about the FA Cup overall. It's keeping it well and truly alive, Phil, this year. That's for sure. Because City are the only team left that have won it in the last quarter of a century. I think I saw. So, from a neutral point of view, which we can now say we are because we've got no dog in the fight anymore, it's definitely keeping it more interesting this year.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I think it's good, really, that some of these clubs that have sort of been floating around mid-table, your likes of Bournemouth and Brighton and teams like that, playing some really good football this year. Obviously, watch a lot of football, excluding United, and some of these teams are playing some really good football. Got a lot of players what have stepped up and sort of look like proper players. And yeah, it's a great opportunity for one of these clubs to sort of get a bit of silverware and sort of consolidate and show that all the work that's going on in the background and sort of the work that's been going on the training pitch, as you can see, they've been improving year in year out. And for one of these clubs, hopefully this year they can get a trip to Wembley and hopefully get some silverware, because when I watch United at the moment, it's really boring. It's don't know what to expect from one week to the next. It's really poor, and obviously when I watch some of these other clubs, and I think in terms of the squad depth and the talent, some of these clubs nowhere near probably what we've got, but just because they're doing the basics a lot better in terms of application, work rate, attitude. Obviously, confidence comes with that as well, but it just shows what can be done. And as I say, one of these clubs hopefully will pick up some silverware this year, because I think one of them will definitely warrant and deserve that, from what I've seen in the last sort of 6-12 months from some of them clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. Evening, Jonathan. How are you, mate?
I'm good, gents. How are we?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Yeah, we were just going on to talking about the FA Cup in general, but we'll spring back to the game itself. What did you make of the 90 minutes, first of all, and then what did you make of the penalty shootout from United yesterday?
Yeah, in terms of the 90 minutes, it wasn't much change from what we've been seeing the last few months, really, was it? I mean, it's just that it has that real interim manager feel. It has all the bones of the Ralph Rangnick era about it. There's just nothing about the team. There's no spark. There's no heart. It's like a group of players that are just, I wouldn't say even playing for their future. It's just like they've just accepted their fate. That I don't know, that they look like they're all accepting the fate of they're all leaving in the summer, which we all know isn't the case because we can't offload a whole squad in one summer. So yeah, it's just it's a hard watch, you know what I mean. And opposition fans like to say that United fans are glory hunters when we give out about what we're watching at the moment, but it's not that, because the real fans understand that you can't win every game, you can't win every trophy, but you want to enjoy what you're watching. And at the moment, it's beyond a hard watch. And um, we were somewhat lucky to even get it to extra time yesterday. Let's be honest. I mean, it was a lovely finish by Bruno. But it's just the lack of chances being created is just really, really concerning. If we were creating a lot of chances and we just weren't finishing them, then it'd be a different thing altogether. But the fact that we're just not creating anything, and I really feel for Rasmus Højlund at the moment because he's bearing the brunt of it, and we're just not playing to his strengths. I've mentioned on previous shows, we're constantly playing the ball to feet. He's a striker that needs to be running onto the ball into space because he has the pace, he has the strength. So yeah, look, I mean, the 90 minutes was poor. The penalties were, look, they're always a lottery with penalties, to be fair. I've seen Victor Lindelof getting a lot of stick for him missing his penalty, but I mean, I was at the Brighton game when we beat them on penalties in Wembley there a couple of years ago, and he absolutely stitched the penalty. So he has a track record of being able to finish. Look, it's a lottery. I'm never too hard on players when they miss a penalty, unless they hit it like 100 yards over the bar, which is ridiculous. But I mean, they didn't, and it's just a case of it. Look, it's a lottery, and did we really deserve to go on and win the FA Cup? Probably not. And if we did, we'd be in the situation we are now, where we're in the Europa League, and we don't really deserve to be there, and we don't really need to be in Europe. Let's be honest. I was talking about this on a previous show with Mark, and I don't really think we could do with Europe next year. I think we could really do with a trimmed down season next year. I know it'll hit us financially, but just a trimmed down season where all we're focused on is the Premier League and the couple of cup competitions, and just trim the squad and really give him time to work with the players at his disposal.
Yeah, Phil, I want to get your take on that, actually, because me and Jonathan have been real advocates for that this year. Obviously, with the decline in our league position, we've said quite unanimously, quite often, that a year without Europe next year probably would benefit, just to get that, like Jonathan said, trim down the season, give Ruben less games to worry about. And yeah, financially, it's going to be a situation. But yeah, I would like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean it's a tricky one. I think in terms of for the managerial side of things, with him obviously keep harping on about being able to work with the players and probably needing more time on the training pitch. I think from that side of things, that's definitely going to be a positive and a benefit that we'll see. We'll not have as much congestion with the fixtures. The only thing for me is obviously if you're not in any sort of European competition, if you're looking to add players to the squad and attract players to sort of come in, then obviously that selling point that there's no European football is probably a factor that would probably come into it. So yeah, that would be the only thing from my side of things, and obviously the financial situation. But yeah, for me, I'm more than happy. I think for next year to sort of not have any European football and just strip it back and let's try and give the manager sort of some time to work with these players and look at this system that he's trying to implement. And as I say, then that then will give him the time, hopefully, for him to sort of do a little bit more, and then we can properly maybe judge him then after sort of another 6-12 months, because then he probably wouldn't have the the excuse or the sort of situation where he's not having enough time to do stuff on the training pitch and really work and look at the sort of system in more detail with obviously some of the players. Because when we're watching at the moment, obviously, the style of play that he's trying to implement, I think it's like, square pegs in round holes. I think some of the players don't suit the system at all. Some of them can't play it. Some of them probably look like they don't want to play that way, or, haven't got the, confidence to be able to do what that role entails. So, yeah, for me, I would be a big, believer that no European football would be a benefit next season, and hopefully we can kick on after that and look forward.
Yeah, because I think we're all probably thinking we're not going to win the Europa League. Mark, I don't know what you think, but even these two games we've got coming up now against Real Sociedad, what are your thoughts? We'll talk about that game exactly on Thursday. Now we'll look ahead to that. What do you think going into that match now?
We don't have a good track record in Europa League against Spanish teams at all. Sociedad are no pushovers. I know they got beat by Barcelona last night, but Barcelona are walking that league this year, so it's the sort of thing we're going to do, isn't it? I can see us having a poor season, winning Europa League, staying in getting in the Champions League and finishing 15th, because you've only got to look at the last two seasons. That's what we've done. We've managed to win a cup.
It's a very West Ham thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you were just obviously talking about the financial implications, bringing in players. It's just a massive vicious circle. And I think the players know that. I think they know, I'm losing 25%. If we don't win this competition, that's 25% of my wages gone because of the Adidas deal. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to cut their sponsorship by 25%. And that's going to come out of everyone's wages. So and that's a guarantee. That's not, oh, that might happen. That's it, written in the contract. So yeah, we've got to win, and that's the thing. That's where you've got to stand up and be counted. And at the moment, there was only a handful of players I would say are capable of doing that. You know, you shouldn't need to be told what to do on the pitch. You just go out and, as Phil said earlier, do the basics. You run hard. You know, you defend, you fight, you lose the ball, you get up, you chase back, and you don't wave your arms around and all of those sort of things. So we've done it in Europe so far. We've dragged ourselves through it.
Yeah, like you say, it's a very us thing to sort of do. If we manage to put it out of the bag and get through to the final and win to get Champions League football and still finish 15th is quite impressive. Let's be honest. But yeah, no. Any other thoughts you wanted to add, Jonathan? Oh, actually, before we do move on, we should probably, Jonathan, actually mention the protests during and before the game, obviously against ticket prices for the FA Cup. What would you make of those when you saw them?
I think it kind of tells you the direction that football is going in. That opposition fans are uniting in that way. It's kind of reminiscent of the Super League a few seasons ago, and I think it's hugely important because I mean you look at the ticket prices for NFL games, and they really do price out that kind of working class fan. Really, like I mean, they're selling these experiences to international fans, and I mean, Man United has long been a club that like encourages international fans, even international fan base. You don't want to discourage international fans coming over to see Old Trafford, but if you're going to start pricing out working class fans who've been going to Old Trafford and watching the club generation upon generation upon generation, then you're losing what football is about. And yeah, look, it's hugely important that every club in the Premier League keep fighting for this because you can see it. It's slowly, ever since COVID now, there's kind of justification that clubs are losing money, so therefore the fans have got to pick up the bill, which is ridiculous when you look at the wages that the players are getting, and they seem to be going up season on season. So it's going to come to a boiling point. I think it needs something like a mass walkout. If you could organise a mass walkout between all 20 Premier League club, I know it's nigh on impossible to organise, but something like that on one given Premier League weekend would definitely resonate amongst all the owners. But yeah, look, it's worrying that football is getting to this point. It really is because yeah, look, I mean, we all know what football means to us. It's an escape from everyday life, and it's escape from bills and whatnot. And if football is going to become that extra bill now because of the cost of bringing your partner or your kids or whatever it may be, then it's going to lose its whole meaning. So yeah, look, I hope there's a positive resolution at the end of it, but it's certainly going to be a long battle.
Yeah, Mark, what did you think?
I think I think Jonathan's hit the nail on the head. If you don't do a mass walkout across all clubs, it does nothing. Man United walking out or not taking the ticket, they will sell those tickets for £200, £300, £400, £500 to people who have come over just to watch a game and try and get a ticket because they're willing to pay that to a tout to get a ticket. Old Trafford will always be full because there's too many fans who want to go. You know, so season ticket holders don't go. It's them that need to walk out. But now they're scared of not getting a renewed season ticket. So that was quite smart. I think that was one of the things about not taking up your ticket or not scanning in and things. So you're going to have to go in and walk out. You can't just protest and not go in. But the ticket prices, I don't have a problem with. But that's just because I go to other games and that's the same price I'm paying for their return. The £60, it's about the normal Premier League asking price. Just because we're Man United doesn't mean we've got 75,000 fans, but we'll cut the ticket price in half. That's just bad business. I understand it's a working class area and the history of the club, but you can't be taking in less money than, say, an Ipswich or Brighton. Like Brighton's full of, well, obviously I'm down. That's my local team. Most of the people I know who have season tickets to Brighton aren't Brighton fans. I've got pictures of them in other teams' kits growing up, but they want to watch Premier League football. Well, Manchester United is always United fans there, you know, because we've got so many. So you're right, we won't get a walkout, but the protests, I still think we're protesting. If we can get united and protest against one thing, and be it the Glazers and maybe Ratcliffe now. That's my opinion. It's focus on one thing. Ticket prices isn't that. We're still going to need the money in the business. So not going, what we're going to do, we're going to make ourselves go bust.
We might end up going that way anyway at this rate, with the amount of redundancies that he wants to make.
True,
It's just
there's too many other teams out there just doing sensible business, and it's the business side of things.
But it isn't the ticket prices. Obviously, they made them £66 across the board, though, right? So you can't tell me that Brighton or Ipswich or whoever other teams are charging this price for the entire fans. There'll still be a concession price. There'll still be a junior price, surely.
There are, but it's so you're getting on as a resale, aren't you? It's a resale ticket, so they can just say it's not available to a kid as well. They can just say they have less kids' tickets available. It's all done through a computer system. It's not hard for them to do it. But some clubs just sell it as AC. On a resale, it's AC. So you want to take the maximum amount for it. Yeah, we should probably still be selling seats for half the price, 30 quid for a kid, 60 quid for an adult. But it's still a seat. You could still take a 5-year-old kid like the good old days, and they'll be stuck behind a 6'2" giant and can't see the game anyway. So it's about where the seat is. If you're up in the rafters, it's no good for a child, is it? Let's be honest. Like, what are they going to see? They're not going to enjoy it from all the way out there.
I think that's the beauty of non-league, really, Phil, isn't it? We haven't had a chance to actually sit down and talk about it yet, and we will. But the beauty of non-league is that, I mean, when I used to go and watch Maidstone United play, that's my local, or was my local team at the time. When I lived over there, it was £10 for an adult, £5 for a kid. If you wanted to sit down, there was a stand. You could pay an extra £2. If not, you were in the rafters.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. As I say, we've talked about obviously the non-league setups, and obviously when you go to a non-league game, you know exactly what you're going to get. You get 22 honest lads who are giving everything on the pitch to win a game of football. And as I say, even in non-league, some of the football that you see is really, really good. There's a lot of good players in non-league, a lot of good football being played, and sometimes, especially at the moment when I'm, watching United at this present time, I'm seeing some better football when I go down to my local teams and watch them play, because, as I said, honest lads who are trying to maybe make it in the game, or get a move to a better club, or you've just got young honest players who want to have an impression on the game. So yeah, non-league for me is really good. And as I say, I've spent a lot of my career in the sort of second half playing in non-league, which I really enjoyed. And obviously when I made that transition from playing professionally into sort of semi-professionally, it surprised me sort of how good actually the standard was. It was a bit of a shock to the system, and obviously getting used to playing on different styles of pitches, and obviously against bigger, stronger players who want to get stuck in a little bit more was difficult to start with. But as time went on, I really enjoyed that, and obviously the battles and sort of having to use that a little bit more experience to sort of get yourself in better positions to give yourself more space and time to do what you can do. So yeah, non-league, brilliant. And as I say, a lot of a cheaper option to go and watch a really good game of football. Especially if you're taking kids and you're going with a few of your family. You could go and have a really good day at a non-league ground for 40, 50 quid if you was taking yourself a few of the kids and whatever. So yeah.
No, yeah, you can't beat non-league football. I think it's the way it's going forward. With Premier League clubs pricing their fans out of grounds, and especially as United, I mean, you don't really want to go and watch that dross. You'd rather go and watch your local team give it all. Did anyone have anything to add on United before we moved on? Anyone want to raise their hand and ridicule United very quickly? No, everyone's happy or not happy. Do you want to do score predictions? Score predictions for Mark, Thursday, 5:45 kickoff, 0-0 first leg. Jonathan?
2-1 Saucy Dad.
Brutal. Phil, what do you think?
I'm just going to say 1-0 Saucy Dad.
1-0, so should have. Damn.
I was trying to be positive with a 0-0.
You were the. I'm going to go 1-0 United. Bruno Fernandes penalty. That's my Stowell prediction so far for every game. Yeah, let's move on. We wanted to get Phil back on. We wanted Mark back on, and Jonathan is joining us. So why fucking not? We're going to talk about the dilemma of the future generations of footballers. So we've spoken about this, I think, on the previous incarnation. Me and a couple of the lads of the podcast about obviously young players coming through. What are their mentality like? What's their motivation like? And we saw a little bit yesterday. Obviously, Wayne Rooney was one of the pundits for BBC yesterday against Fulham, and he sort of said that about Rasmus Højlund and a lack of a striker to look up to and sort of stuff like that. Phil, obviously, you came up through the academy at United, and you've coached. What do you find sort of the main differences of like youth football now compared to sort of when you were in the academy and when you were coming up through the ranks? So what was it, 20 years ago now, I suppose?
Yeah, just around about 20 years ago, mate. I think the biggest difference for me, which obviously I go to Carrington every now and again, and I'm sort of still, tied in with the club to do little bits and bobs and stuff. But the biggest difference for me when I was there, you've always got experienced players that will help advise. You can do training, like shooting drills after training, and everybody's in it together. I think it was obviously when COVID happened. I think the sort of building got separated, and the first team was completely separate, and all the youth team and the reserves were sort of in the other side of the building. Now, the best part of my experience at United, obviously, I was there for 10 years. When I left school and went full time, I was sort of mixing every single day with all the first team players in the morning, having breakfast, speaking to them, obviously after training, watching them, and then being able to do work with the strikers in the gym after training, doing some, fitness and sort of specific stuff that you'd be giving on sort of that side of things. So being able to tap in and have that sort of interaction with them first team players for me as a young kid is sort of invaluable. And I think being able to watch and sort of speak to some of them players about your own game and obviously some of the stuff that they're doing in their game and being able to work with them is sort of for me something that the club are massively missing out on at this moment in time. I think that was a massive part of me getting better as a player, and as I say, feeling part of the sort of family, if you like, because you could sort of touch it and taste it that you're not that far away from maybe getting into that first team changing room even at 17, 18. I think nowadays, obviously, the players not being able to have that kind of access and a lot of the game going more down the sports science route, a lot of analytics and not being able to, for me, after training, I used to always love, I'd get a bag of balls, I'd go and do some finishing. I'd get a bag of balls, I'd go and do, whatever it was. If one of the other lads wanted me to, do some crosses and they'd do some defending, heading. Every day after training, I would make the most of that opportunity to, better myself and try and do a little bit extra. I think now, the way the game's gone, obviously the sports science are telling these lads that you've done too much and you need to get in and you can't do this. And obviously they all wear the monitors and all that kind of thing, and they're tired of obviously burning out and stuff like that. But for me as a player, I used to love just being able to be free and do them little bits of extra things and working with players on different aspects in the game that probably needed improving. And I'm not saying that kind of thing doesn't go on now. I think obviously some elements of that will still happen, but I just think that's a massive part of sort of the functionality really of coming out through the academy into sort of first team and full time football, being able to have them opportunities and being able to mix with some of them players when I was at the club certainly was invaluable for me. I think he's gone.
No, it's all right. I mean, sorry about that. Disconnected for a second there, Mark. You were nodding up pretty much all the way through that.
I look like Churchill and the dog. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, you were agreeing all the way through, mate.
Yeah, so obviously I coach down at county level for an Isthmian, South team. And you're right in the stuff you're saying about this extra work. Even we wear trackers, to check all their stats. That being told you can't go do extras, you've got to rest. Like Phil, hands down, if you're just going to ping in some shots from the edge of the box, you're not running, you're not putting in extra minutes really in those legs. You probably do more running up and down some stairs at home or something like that than taking a few shots. I know you could pull a calf or something, but how often does that happen? Like, to be honest, we're talking about the top of the game. And we get so many leaks out of the club about, they don't want to do this. Why are we not getting Rasmus is out pinging balls into the back of the net to raise his profile? He's trying everything, because you're right. We always hear ex-players, obviously yourself being one, every day someone was out doing something in one of the back pitches. They just go off other side of the training complex on their own and do work. But I feel standards dropped when we became soft as parents. No one's allowed to clean boots anymore. No one sweeps the changing room. No, but that interaction with the player was what it was all about. That's where your money came from.
Yeah.
You were hoping for that Christmas bonus, that end of season bonus, where someone just, mate, thank you. Yeah. I heard Jody Morris talking about it, where I didn't realise he was Dennis Wise's boot boy. And he was coming in on Christmas Day. As a kid, if you want to be a footballer, this is your sacrifice. You're going to sacrifice your Christmas. You're going to sacrifice your friends, your family. We all know about Gary Neville not having any friends, because he gave them all up. But that sort of thing where every parent now, especially when you're coaching younger kids, their child's going to be the next Messi, the next Ronaldo, because he can run around. All right, we can do all these tricks, but is he a team player? That's what the scouts are looking for, is everything that a parent goes on. But Phil, I wanted to ask you, do you think parents are destroying the game when they get involved with their player's career? Because we're now hearing these big contracts, like, for their age, and they don't know about this money. Someone's putting those figures in their heads, and it isn't always agents.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you, mate. I think that's another massive point that you just mentioned there. Like, obviously, I think it was just sort of phasing out as I finished my YTS. Funny enough, I used to pump the balls up, make the drinks, clean some of the players' boots. I used to do Scholes's boots, and I used to get a nice little bonus off him at Christmas, which was brilliant. And I think, that keeps you grounded and sort of, a lot of these players now that, they're getting big contracts at the age of like 16, 17, think they've already made it when they've not even, kicked a ball yet properly in the first team. And I think getting too much too soon is a massive, thing that's just taking their eye off the ball. And obviously, when you get that big contract, that's really when the hard work should be starting. I think it's having an adverse effect, and now some of these younger players are getting the big contracts and they're taking the foot off the gas and thinking, right, I've got my contract now, I've got a 3-4 year contract, and I can relax. I don't have to, do anything else now and just let myself, tick over. And I think that's where we are really in terms of, in this generation, we're sort of seeing clubs give players far too much without having to do enough. For me, I think I mentioned this last time about maybe doing a breakdown of a contract and having it more incentivized, like saying, obviously, if you hit a certain amount of goals, say if it's a striker in a season, you activate this extra part of your contract, or because if you give them everything straight away, as we've seen with a lot of the players now, they sort of just sit on the laurels and go through the motions. But yeah, just to touch on the point about parents, I think that's another massive issue that we're having. I think obviously a lot of parents now are seeing the kind of money that's getting thrown around and, obviously wanting the best for their child. But again, this is sort of, filling their heads with all this nonsense and rubbish and sort of, getting a massive contract without having to do that much is having, a negative effect, in my opinion, because you get into that comfort zone and you feel like, the hard work's been done, when really it should be, at that age especially, you should be, gritting your teeth and doing extra and, trying to pick up every little bit of information that you can off, anyone who can help you, because that was what I did when I first got in there and I was full time. I couldn't believe it, all the sort of opportunities that were there in front of me. And when I got asked to go and do some finishing with Ruud van Nistelrooy and Solskjaer and Saha and Rooney as a young kid, you're snapping your hand off and saying, yeah, I can't, turn that kind of thing down. Um, Nowadays, I think because there's so many distractions, a lot of these players can't wait to get home from the training ground, and there's all other things going on. There's sort of people who's got clothing brands and all this kind of stuff, which are just distractions. And the main focus for me was football. That was it. There was none of the social media. There was no other main distractions for me. All I wanted to do was become a professional footballer and do everything I could to make myself a better player. And nowadays, I think there's too much going on in terms of distractions and things that are just taking the player's eye off the ball.
Yeah, I find that interesting you said that, because I literally have got written down, do you think the dream is no longer to be a player, it's to be rich and famous?
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't, put that on every single player. I still see a lot of players who you can see have got that work rate and determination to try and better themselves, and they do a lot of stuff outside of football to keep themselves in good shape and do as much as they can. But yeah, I think because we've not got as many now, what I would call proper, real role models. Um, a lot of the younger generation are seeing, what a lot of the players are doing, and it seems to me as though a lot of the players don't really care as much anymore about, if you lose a game of football on a Saturday, that used to ruin our weekend, and obviously the dressing room would be really somber, and you'd come in training and you'd all be, right at it to try and make sure the next game we'd sort of, have a big reaction and prove a point. Now it just seems to me like it's everybody's just going through the motions, and it doesn't really hurt them enough to lose a game of football, and especially from a personal point of view for me, obviously, if you're not playing well and you're going through a little bit of a bad spell individually, um, I'd be wanting to do everything I could to try and make sure that I was ready and sort of going to be a positive reaction in the next game. I think too many of these players nowadays just seem to not really be bothered whether the performances are good, bad, or indifferent. And I think again that comes down to the money situation with the duration of the contracts and just being really content and settled with where they are as an individual with life and the sort of meaning and the sort of 3 points that should mean everything to you on a Saturday has sort of dwindled out a little bit. It's sad to see for me because obviously I was brought up in the generation where you go to war every single week and the 3 points was the be all and end all. And yeah, it's sort of like chalk and cheese really from what I'm seeing nowadays, which is really disappointing if I'm being honest, because the characters that I was in and around at the time I was at the club, that the standards were up here, and if you drop below it, then you was made aware, and if it wasn't um, dealt with, then you'd find yourself not playing at all. So it's just one of them things where, as I say, over time it's gradually been creeping out of the game, and we're at a point now where the player power and the money situation for a lot of these young players is gone too far for me, and it's having a massive adverse effect.
Yeah, no, absolutely, chat's really good stuff. Jonathan, Naomi absolutely hits the nail on the head there. We've spoken about this so often on the channel when it comes to United, but in general, I think it's such a massive issue when you've got teenagers and kids nowadays that they're attracted to different things and not just working hard and applying themselves at certain things. They just want to grow up to be rich and famous by getting on. I don't know, I say YouTube as we're all sitting here streaming live on YouTube, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it's a real issue with sort of, I mean, Naomi hits an epidemic of just not enough role models.
Yeah, the problem is that you've got a lot of players who are part-time footballers on full-time wages, and they have their heads elsewhere like that with TikTok, with social media deals, with clothing companies, with other businesses they have set up on the side, and the football is their money maker. It's their consistent weekly wage coming in, but it doesn't mean as much. As Phil said there, it's just a different generation of players now. And you look at the situation at Liverpool, you can see why they're so desperate to keep hold of the likes of Van Dijk and Salah, because they're leaders, they're role models, and love them or hate them, that's what they are. That club would be in a hell of a different place if it wasn't for those two. And Keane references it a lot. He doesn't mention the ability of the players when he came into the Manchester United team in the mid 90s. He mentions their character, and there is just no character in football in general anymore, but particularly at Man United. I very rarely hear Keane referencing the best players he ever played with. He mentions the best characters and leaders in the changing room, players you look up to. And it's sad, really, because even football as a whole just isn't as much of a spectacle anymore, because there's just no characters and like that, no leaders anymore. And you think back of major international tournaments in the past and World Cups and the players that you were looking at, and they're just not there anymore. I think it comes down to maybe overcoaching as well. You're kind of coaching the characters out of the game, and they're all set onto this one-dimensional way of thinking. I mean, Pep Guardiola came in and he revolutionized football. Don't get me wrong; he's been highly successful doing what he's doing, but if you don't do exactly what he's saying, you're out of the team. And it's just kind of coaching that natural ability and probably that natural instinct out of players. And um, yeah, it's just a different game now. I'm not too sure football as a whole will we ever see it the way it was before, and I'm not too sure we'll see Manchester United the way it was before. I hope, and I think we will. Obviously, things go in cycles. We're not going to be unsuccessful forever. I think we're too big of a club and an institution to consistently fail forever. But it's going to take a hell of a lot of work to get back to where, or anywhere near where we were before. And it's going to take a hell of a lot of planning in the transfer market to identify the right characters, because there ain't too many leaders in that changing room at the moment. There's players you like to think will be leaders, but Bruno's our captain, and there's no doubt about it, he's our best player, but he ain't the captain. He tries, and he's our captain kind of by proxy, but he's not a natural leader that's going to guide a team to a Premier League title, in my opinion. But yeah, and when Naomi's right, it's kind of a bit of an epidemic at the moment, and it's sad, really, because it's just making football less of a spectacle. Even the rivalries just aren't the same anymore. I mean, I think back to the Man United and Arsenal rivalry in the early noughties, and I said it on previous shows. It's probably the best rivalry in the Premier League era for me, because it was just such a hateful rivalry because of all the big players you had in there. And like what Phil said, they were just born winners. If you didn't get 3 points on a Saturday, your week was ruined. Nowadays you've got players swapping jerseys at half time. Do you know what I mean? And it's taking the wind out of the rivalry, and it's getting toxic then off the field because of faceless fans on social media, like personally abusing other fans. It's just football's in a bad place at the moment, and I think it has a lot to do with society as well. So I'm not too sure if we're going to be able to completely eradicate that. But yeah, look, I mean, hopefully in a few years under Ineos they do get it right and we get back to where we are, or somewhere near where we were before.
Yeah, and hopefully without Glazer's input as well, hopefully it gets to the point. Mark, again, you're like Winston Churchill nodding dog down there. You're agreeing so much. Go for it. What do you want to say?
No, I think it's a good conversation. We're all hitting those little points, and it doesn't matter what level you've played at, what life you've lived. We all watch football through the same eyes. We watch it to enjoy it, yeah. And you can be your local team. You're going to have a favourite player, and I get that. And I think I said on previous shows, Manchester United has become this team where we support the player and not the club, and that's because of social media. A bit like what Nathan said earlier, we're on YouTube, we're on streaming live, across multiple platforms. But social media has destroyed all sports. Jonathan, you're saying about Man United's too big a club not to come back. Yeah, may want to look into the Dallas Cowboys because they're one of the richest sports teams in the world, and they can't win anything. So it does happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you touched on something earlier about we call it tiki-taka football, don't we? The coaching football now, we all play Pep. Phil, I don't know, you've got your own academy, I understand. So I don't know how you play out. My son's with Russell Martin's academy, and through all the football that I do, everyone plays 4-3-3 or 3-4-3, or everyone plays the same formations. They play the same things. Press when they come here. They do. Football's becoming robotic, and Amarin's trying to change it, and it's as if our players. I hate to say it, we've got a load of Jamie Redknaps. in his own words, he's not the most intelligent. He knew his job. He didn't really know what anyone else done out on the pitch. He just knew to do his job, which we could do with right now. I'll give you one job, one instruction. If you're the wide player, get up and down, defend, midfield, and attack. The overcoaching, they used to say it was 1% of footballers made it. I think it's lower than that now, because there's so many academies and an academy of an academy. We've got Brighton's academy, but then you've got Brighton in the community, which has a in-between academy step as well to get them, if they're good enough, they can go into for trials. This 1%, it's kids are being promised a dream. They're coming out, and I know for sure, Phil, you can ring off a load of players who have failed and want big wages at non-league clubs, yet they never achieved anything in their life. Even now, or 20 years ago, when they were coming out, they go, well, I was let go from Brighton. Yeah, because you weren't good enough. You were let go. Doesn't mean you get a big wage. We now overcoach them. They put all these demands on them, but they only know how to do one thing. Keep the ball, pass the ball, slow football. And as soon as you're told to run, I find the fitness of a lot of players in, say, the central midfield positions, things like that. They just stand there. They're standing around going, but this is where I've been told to be. Do you think that's a real problem in youth football, that they're coached so heavily into a individual position that football intelligence is going?
Yeah, no, massively. I think when Jonathan was speaking about it, then that was something that really hit home with me, and I resonated with that quite strongly. I think when I think back to my time in the academy, coming through at United, I think a lot of the coaches that I worked under would work more on the individual player to try and give you ideas. It wouldn't be, this is what I expect from you every single game. I need you to make sure you do this, this, and this. I think, the freedom that a player used to have, and being able to use your own sort of improvisation during a game of football. The coaches would always give you the tools in order for you to perform. But then they used to give us a lot of freedom to do what we wanted on the pitch. It wasn't so rigid and structured that, you can't come out of this area. If you're playing on the, as a striker, one of you, always needs to stretch the pitch. The other one always needs to be give an option into feet. All these little messages that we was given as kids was brilliant, because, as I say, when you're learning the game and they're painting all these pictures for you, and they're giving you the type of movements that you need to learn to be able to give you more time and space on the ball, for me was brilliant, because I was lucky enough to sort of go up a couple of age groups as well, because I sort of filled out quickly and was a lot bigger and stronger. So for me, being able to go up a couple of age groups and work with some of the bigger players, which obviously then brings you on, because you need to be a little bit sharper in your passing. You've got to move the ball quicker. You've got to be a little bit stronger. All these little things, are massive in terms of, when you're getting ready for going into the professional game and sort of, working in the proper football. So, yeah, for me, I think nowadays we look at it, and I think a lot of these players are getting overcoached. They're getting given too much information. I used to love, playing at United when I sort of went into the youth team and the reserve team games, because you had a freedom to do whatever you wanted. The managers would always, give you that license to, do whatever you want. You didn't have to stay in a certain position. You could drop short, you could go long. And I think that brought out the best in me, certainly. And speak to other lads who was there at that time, they'll probably echo my thoughts and say the same. Just being able to do, whatever feels right in a game. You can set up however you want, but, in a game of football, sometimes things don't go to plan. And if you're just setting a sort of formation and you've been told one thing and you're not going to move out of that, you're not going to last very long and you're going to end up getting caught out or undone. I think what you've got to do in a game of football is be flexible, be adaptable, be able to recognise things when things aren't going well. How can I, do something, be proactive and not reactive? I think I've seen a lot of games this year for United, especially where I've noticed something's not right after 10, 15 minutes. And I'm just waiting for someone to maybe, say, right, we need to, change this, or you need to tuck in, or, we're getting done down the left here. You need to make sure you're dropping back. And I don't see any of that. It just looks like we're just all winging it and there's no real communication on the pitch. It's as though we're scared and we're waiting for the manager to be shouting on instructions before we actually do anything. Whereas the teams I grew up in, even in the reserves and in the youth team, we'd have characters on the pitch. You'd be like, hang on a minute, no, this isn't going right. You need to tuck in, or, hang on, they're catching us out here. You need to maybe drop back and, stop him from getting on the ball. Just have a little bit more about you and be able to notice things yourself and have that bit of self-belief and sort of character to manage the game. And, when you speak to a lot of old professionals, Sir Alex, he never really did that much in terms of in the training and, in a game, from the sideline, it would be the players on the pitch that would, rectify and sort anything out if things wasn't going to plan. And I think that's what's massively gone out of the game due to, this overcoaching, all the sports science, and obviously Pep's, new brand of football, which, a lot of players in non-league are trying to play, which for me is madness because, trying to play out, in League Two when you've got a goalkeeper who's probably not confident with the ball at his feet. You've got, centre half, so you probably don't want that ball into feet, and it just causes more problems. You've got to sort of play to your strengths, play percentage football. Great if you do want to play out when the time's right, that's fine. But trying to replicate what Man City are doing in the Premier League with the players they've got at their disposal, sometimes you've just got to, use a little bit of common sense for me.
Yeah, absolutely spot on, chaps. Really good. We're going to sort of come to the end. We were talking earlier, Phil, about motivating players, and I was wondering if you could sort of take us to the end with a story about you picking up the wrong wage slip. Do you know the story I'm talking about? Maybe take us to the end of the show on that.
Yeah,
the guys haven't heard it.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone who hasn't heard this story, this was something that happened. So when I was 17, I was involved in a car crash at the end of that first year that I was a YT. I'd played in the Youth Cup the night before against Man City. We'd won 2-1. And the day after, we'd come in for a cool down. I was involved in a car crash on the way home from training with one of the older lads who I stayed in digs with. So yeah, I'd had a really bad incident where I suffered a lot of bad injuries. I was out for just over 12 months, and was making a recovery. And it was a couple of months after I'd started back training. I finished training one day, and we used to get our wage slips off Kath. Obviously, God rest her soul. She passed away not so long ago, and I was lucky enough to actually see her a couple of months before she went off ill, which I'm really glad, because she was an amazing person, and somebody again, which we just touched on now about a lot of these redundancies coming up. People like Kath, integral in what the club used to be, and always had a smile on her face. Would make you feel $1 million every time you walked into the training ground. And yeah, she used to sort of deal with the wages. So this one particular day, I was walking out the training ground, and Kath, she used to always have a smile on her face. She was fanning through the wage slips and chatting away as she was. And she gave me what I thought was my wage slip as I was on my way out, and wished me well. So I've walked back to my car and sat down. Had a couple of good wins that month. I'd played in the reserves a few times and got a couple of wins. So for me at that point, when you played in the reserves and you got a couple of wins, the bonuses were quite good. I used to get £180 an extra for a win, and I think it was £100 for a draw. So was really excited to have a look in my wage slip and see how much I'd come away with. as I ripped the strip from the side of the wage slip, I sort of seen, about 7 or 8 different bonuses that I wasn't used to. And when I sort of looked and peeled it away and seen the net pay, I was like, oh my word. I said, I'm, definitely not on that much. And these reserve bonuses are definitely not paying that much. So as I peeled it back further, I'd seen that she'd given me Roy Keane's wage slip. I hadn't fully ripped it, so it was still slightly intact. But obviously at this point, you can imagine I'm sweating and obviously had to go back in. But as I'm walking back down the ramp, obviously Carrington was glass. You could see through the windows. And Roy Keane stood at reception, like going mad, like obviously waiting for his wage slip, trying to, get off. So I'm obviously walking down thinking, oh, this isn't going to go down well. So as I've gone in, Kat sort of smiled again and said, "Hi, Phil, you okay? Everything all right?" And I've gone, "No," I said, "I think you've given me the wrong wage slip, Kath." And Keane obviously turned and looked at me at this point and was thinking, "Oh, I think I know what's gone on here." So Kat took the wage slip off me, and she's sort of still fanning through all these slips looking for Keane. And I said, "Oh, I think you might have given me the wrong wage slip there, Kath. I think that one might be someone else's." And she's gone, "Oh, let me have." Oh, really sorry. So Keane's obviously fuming at this point because he's seen that the wage slip's half open. I've obviously seen what money he's on and all his bonuses and this, that, and the other. And she's giving this half opened wage slip, and he's sort of just took it off her, and he's not gone. He's just stayed. He's just stood still. And she was like, "I'm really sorry about that, Phil." She was like, "That's my fault. I'm going to apologise." And I was waiting for Keane to walk off because I was thinking I don't want him to hang around here while I get my wage slip. But he didn't go anywhere, and she's fanning through looking for my actual wage slip. And as he was doing it, he sort of just put his arm around me and just squoze me. And I was like, "Oh no, this isn't going to go well." And then eventually she gets my wage slip, gives it to me, and she apologises again and says, "Oh, I'm really sorry. That was, my fault. I'm sorry about that, lads. I'll see you in the morning." And then as we're walking out, Keno's walking with his arm around me, and we get out the door and we're walking up the ramp towards the car park. And he just says to me, "Go on then, tell me, did you have a look?" And I was sort of sweating and going stuttering like mad. And I just tried to make out that I hadn't seen it. I said, "Oh, I knew straight away, right? It wasn't my wage slip. I seen all the bonuses, and I came straight back in." And he just was laughing. He knew obviously that I'd seen it. And to be fair to him, I think when I was in hospital after the crash, as the club captain, he came and seen me and visited me in hospital. And he was brilliant with me that day. To be fair, I don't remember that much because I was on quite a lot of medication, but I remember him turning up, and I thought, you know what, fair play. He didn't have to do that, and he came out his way one evening and brought a couple of the other first team lads and had a good chat with me and was really good because at the time Keno was pretty brutal, to be fair, with a lot of the young players. If you had a flash car or if you went, out and you wasn't really focused on the job in hand and trying to be the best player that you could be, he'd let you know about it. And obviously, for me, I think he probably had a little bit of a soft spot for me because I'd been in that car crash and he'd known that I'd been out for a year and that I'd been really working hard in the gym to get myself back. And yeah, he sort of was brilliant with me. He just had a bit of a laugh and a joke, and he said, the money is brilliant, and obviously I'm not bothered that you've seen it. He said, hopefully one day, you'll be on that kind of money. He said, "I don't really play football for the money." He said, I play football to win football matches and win trophies. And I think that stuck with me because I thought, for someone like him, who's obviously, a fantastic player, probably one of United's greatest ever players, for him to come out with that, at that moment and that point, really sort of, stuck with me. And I thought, as I say, when you're looking at role models, and as a young player, for me, being in around the club at that time, with players like Roy and a lot of the other players, to learn from is sort of, invaluable. And that sort of story was probably one of my favourite. I've obviously got a lot of stories from, various different players and experiences, but that one's probably one of my favourite, just purely based on, obviously, for the timing of it with me, obviously coming back from a long-term injury, and obviously the way it could have probably played out if it was a different player or a different scenario. But yeah, obviously Keano, for me, legend, and obviously one of my favourite players. I think, that sort of speaks volumes about what he was about. And obviously as a player, you can't ask for, you go into war, you want Keano at the side of you. Yeah, he's a brilliant guy, and I think obviously now you see him, and obviously he's quite brutal with some of his analysis, but I think that's partly down to frustration because of what he used to see at United, especially with, as I say, we talk about characters, not necessarily about ability. You just, every day you're going into training, the standards are so high, the players are all pulling together, you win and lose together. If anything, there was days and there was times where there was probably things that wasn't good enough, or there was times where probably things would have blown out into a proportion and been out in the media and would have caused massive disruption. But it never used to get to that point. It used to just get dealt with in the training ground, nipped in the bud. Players knew when they stepped out of line what was expected, and obviously they reacted in the right way. Whereas I see, nowadays there's a lot of stuff that players reacting the opposite way, and they expect everyone to feel sorry for themselves, and they're walking around with a chip on the shoulder, and they don't react in the positive way, which then obviously leads to a negative effect within the dressing room, and obviously that's more talking points again for the club, which they don't need, especially when they're going through bad moments. So yeah, good story to finish on, and hopefully if we get a chance again, we'll maybe touch on some of the other stories that I have with maybe some of the other players. But yeah, good way to end.
Yeah, really brilliant. I love that story. You told it before, and I absolutely love it. So, but it really resonates with sort of motivating young players to get an arm around the shoulder like that from such an iconic captain and just an unbelievable player in his day. Yeah, brilliant story. Definitely get you on again to tell more stories. I love your Ronaldo story as well with the ping pong table, but
Yeah,
we'll save that for another day. Absolutely, guys. Really appreciate your time tonight. Yeah, for everyone watching, keep an eye out on our socials. We'll be putting more channel news up soon for more shows this week. Probably looking at the weekend now. Yeah, enjoy the game on Thursday. I think it's still currently 1-1 in the last game in the FA Cup. But yeah, no, really appreciate your time, guys, and we'll see you all again very soon.